In a previous lesson, you learned how to create strings by enclosing text in quotation marks. Numbers in Python require no such special treatment. When you want to use a number, simply include it in your source code. If you want to assign a number to a variable, simply use the format of variable name equals number. There are a couple of examples of doing this on your screen. Python supports integers as well as floating point numbers. Integers are whole numbers or numbers without a decimal point. Floating point numbers always contain a decimal point. The data type for integers is int, while the data type for floating point numbers is float. The Python interpreter can perform several operations with numbers. Here's a table of the most commonly used numeric operations. Use the plus sign to add, the minus sign to subtract, an asterisk, or star as I like to call them, to multiply, a forward slash to divide, a double asterisk or double star to exponentiate, and a percent sign for modulo. You're probably familiar with most of the symbols in the previous table. However, the double star operator is for exponentiation, which means to raise to the power of. For example, 2 star star 4 means 2 raised to the power of 4. This is equivalent to 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 and results in an outcome of 16. The percent sign performs the modulo operation. It simply returns the remainder. For example, 3 percent sign 2 is 1 because 3 divided by 2 is 1 with a remainder of 1. 4 modulo 2 returns 0 since 4 divided by 2 is 2 with a remainder of 0. Python allows you to perform mathematical calculations right in the interpreter. Here are a couple of simple calculations. When you type in 1 plus 2 and hit enter, the Python interpreter immediately returns the result of that operation, which is 3. It acts pretty much like a calculator. You can also assign the resulting value of a mathematical operation to a variable, as in this example on your screen. Let's just look at the first line. The result of 1 plus 2 will be stored in the variable named sum. The remainder of the code creates more variables and stores the output of those mathematical operations in those variables. Finally, at the bottom of the screen, we display those results using a series of print functions. Here is the output of the Python program from the previous screen. We can see that the sum of 1 plus 2, which is 3, is displayed on the first line of output. Even though the result of 8 divided by 2 is the integer 4, you might have noticed that the floating point number 4.0 was in the output created by the previous example. The division operator performs floating point division and will always return a floating point number. Also, be aware if you add an integer to a floating point number, the result will be a float. This example demonstrates how you can even perform mathematical operations using variables. Sum evaluates to 3, difference evaluates to 99, and on the third line, the variable new_number will evaluate to 102 because the value of the sum variable is 3. When it's added to the value of the difference variable, which is 99, the result is 102. In the last two print statements, we perform calculations on variables there as well. This example creates a variable named quantity and assigns it the numeric value of 3. It also creates a variable named quantity_string and assigns it the string of 3. Remember that strings are enclosed in quotation marks. Here we've used single quotation marks, but you could have used double quotation marks as well. If you try to perform a mathematical operation against a string, you will encounter an error. Just be aware that if you surround a number in quotes, it becomes a string. To convert a string into an integer, use the int or int function and pass in the string to convert. This time you'll notice that we did not get an error because we used all numbers to perform our calculation. The result of int quantity_string is the integer 3. 3 plus 2 equals 5, which is stored in the variable total. Finally, that value is printed to the screen using the print function. To convert a string or an integer into a floating point number, use the float function and pass in the string or integer to convert. Here the output is 3.0 since the string 3 was converted to a floating point number, and floating point numbers always contain a decimal place.